President, can I join others in recognising International Firefighters Day and paying tribute to all those who run towards danger in order to protect their fellow citizens, and in particular our thoughts are with the family of Barry Martin, who so tragically lost his life at just 38 years old. Presiding Officer, this morning the Criminal Justice Committee published its review of the Government's Domestic Abuse Act. The Act was passed by this Parliament in February 2018 to give greater protections to victims, particularly women and children, from coercion and abuse. But today, 5 years on, the committee concludes that progress on implementing the changes has been far too slow. In the words of one expert who gave evidence, the experience of victims and survivors is still unremittingly grim. When the Act was brought in, the then Justice Secretary, Humza Yousaf, said that he hoped victims would be able to seek the support with the confidence that the law is behind them. When so many women and children are still being failed, does the First Minister believe his government have lived up to that ambition?
First Minister.
I believe we have, but I believe there's always more that we can and we should do. And can I say that I welcome the publication of the Criminal Justice Committee report on their post-legislative scrutiny of the Domestic Abuse Act in 2018. And we have taken action, not just as a government. In fairness, it has been a collective effort by this Parliament to respond to the needs of victims of domestic abuse. We will, of course, give very careful consideration to the 8 recommendations before responding formally. But what I will be clear on, and again I'm sure there is collective agreement on this, that any form of abuse is unacceptable. And the new domestic abuse offence, which has been heralded as gold standard legislation, has given more powers to police, to the courts, to punish perpetrators of abuse and protect people at risk. However, as the report highlights, there is clearly still more work to be done, Presiding Officer, in order to improve the justice system's response to domestic abuse and for the survivors of domestic abuse. And we'll work with those justice agencies to consider those recommendations.
Anas Sarwar.
The First Minister suggests that the ambition has been met. I suggest he listens to and reads the testimony of the victims about how they feel about the process. Because this bill was marked as world-leading. But as usual, this SNP government are content to talk up change and settle for less. But it's not just this legislation. There is neglect across our justice system. We have a hate crime bill that has never been enforced, a court backlog of over 27,000 criminal cases, and 816 fewer police officers since 2020. And when the First Minister was Justice Secretary, there was a damning review of the police complaints and disciplinary system. It reported evidence of misogyny, racism and serious discrimination issues within Police Scotland. In 2020, the then Justice Secretary, Humza Yousaf, told this chamber that the government would, and I quote, move at pace in its response, and there will be no dithering, nor will there be delay. But Newsnight has spoken to women about the misogyny they faced while working in our police force. They say many are too scared to speak out, and many have been forced to leave. Is this the decisive action the First Minister was talking about?
First Minister.
Well, decisive action has seen those court backlogs, of course, fall. And the reason why those court backlogs increased so much was because of the global pandemic. I think all of us can and should recognise that. Decisive action has seen, as the SNP have been in government, the lowest crime figures on record. Of course, our record in relation to funding the police and ensuring that there are more police officers on the beat is a good one. That's why we have more police officers per head than in England and indeed in Wales. And in terms of misogyny, we're taking decisive action on the back of an excellent report by Baroness Kennedy in relation to what more we can do, both legislatively and as a society, in tackling misogyny. In terms of the police, in relation to some of the concerns that have been raised in relation to misogyny in the police force, I know from my engagement with the Chief Constable, with Ian Livingston, how seriously he takes the issue of misogyny in policing, and I know that he has taken action to address that, and we take, as the government, and I know the police do, extremely seriously any concerns raised against police officers. When things go wrong, the police must, of course, be held to account, and that's why I'm pleased that some of the whistleblowing policies in relation to Police Scotland have been updated by the SPA. That's in direct response to the work that we commissioned from Dame Elise Angelini in 2018. That was the review of complaints handling, investigation and misconduct issues in relation to policing. So that's decisive action that we have taken. Am I saying everything is perfect? Of course not. There is more that we can do, both for those who serve in a police force, but also the public that we seek to serve. But there is a good track record of this government in relation to tackling the issues that matter to people and keeping, of course, people safe right up and down Scotland.
Anas Sarwar.
I'm sorry, but that is a really complacent answer, I think, from the First Minister. I think he seems to be in denial. The fact that female police officers are feeling compelled to speak to the media in order to inspire change from this government is a record of failure, not one of success or progress. Because there is chaos across our criminal justice system. Courts are backlogged, prisons are overcrowded, and the police force is being starved of resources. But isn't this the problem with this First Minister? He likes to talk big, but consistently fails to deliver. Because this is an incompetent and dysfunctional SNP government, which after 16 years has left every Scottish institution weaker. A justice system that too often fails victims. A transport system that too often fails communities. An education system that too often fails our children. And a health service that too often fails staff and patients. So is it any wonder that every single day more and more people are losing trust and faith in this failing SNP government?
First Minister.
Anas Sarwar calls it rhetoric, but they're facts. They're facts that he cannot and should not seek to avoid. And when it comes to each and every government department, we can look at the achievements of this government. In health, for example, we have record health spending, over £19 billion to be invested in the NHS this financial year. NHS staffing up to historically high levels. Our A&E services, of course, continue to be the best performing anywhere in the UK in terms of education. Not just record investment in education, but record high numbers of school leavers in education, employment or training. We have the narrowest gap on record between school leavers from the most and least deprived areas, attaining one or more passes at SEQF level 4 or better. In justice, I've already said, we have crime at the lowest level since 1974, down 42% under the SNP, the highest number of police officers than at any other time during the last administration when Labour were last in power. More police officers per head than England and Wales. When it comes to the economy, unemployment at record low levels, and I could go on and on and on. And despite the fact that, of course, the SNP has undoubtedly had some of the most difficult and challenging weeks, we still enjoy incredibly popular support. And Anas Sarwar still, of course, in second place. And that betrays the level or the lack of ambition that Anas Sarwar has after wall-to-wall coverage, negative coverage of the SNP for 5 to 6 weeks. He's happy being in second place. That's the ambition he's got for the Labour Party, and that's why the people of Scotland haven't trusted them in the last 16 years in government.